Okay, we're at 6 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Let's do roll call. John, you want to start?
John Hughes, City Attorney. Travis Third, Ward 1.
Brian McGreevy, Ward 2.
Deborah McIsaac, me.
Brian Cindy, Ward 2.
All present and coming. Let's do we do the pledge of allegiance again? We probably do, don't we? Yeah, okay, let's do the pledge of allegiance. We love it. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation. And justice for all.
Okay, we just got a couple of items that we need to handle tonight. The reason for this special meeting was for the second reading of ordinance 308 and 309. For those of you that are new to this, what we were doing is trying to help the school, keep the expansion in the high school. And so what we did is we, crafted these ordinances, and because of the ordinance process, we have to have at least 5 business days between the first reading and the second reading. And so this is that second reading. And so basically what happens now is if there's any major changes, then we start the timer again. But I believe that we did a wonderful job writing these ordinances. Does anybody have any comments or questions on these?
I believe so. They were well written.
Pretty straightforward stuff. And so all we have to do is get a motion to, go ahead, Charles, you know what to do.
I was just gonna say, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 308.
I need a second.
Second.
Ryan's the second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Let's go ahead to 309 then.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 309.
Travis is overachieving this evening.
Second.
Ryan's got it again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. So then what happens from here, Miss Linda?
They get published and then they can be referred up to 20 days after publication.
Yes, and so
They become effective on the 27th, I believe, of April.
does that sound right, Jason? Okay. We just want to make sure we're coordinating closely with the school to make sure everybody's expectations are set. And I'm pleased to say everything is going off wonderfully, as long as the weather doesn't turn crappy, right? So, the time for the referendum is citizens always have the ability to do checks and balances on anything that the council does. So they have 21 days to issue a petition to change or put it to a vote, I think is what it does. They do a referendum and there's a certain number of citizens required to put it to a vote. And then we have an election and we decide what we're going to do with that. So that's just all part of our democratic process. So that's about that. Next thing, summer rec. We're all waiting with bated breath, trying to figure out if we're going to turn the IMCA today. And they're just doing the last final things. Is that right, Bob? We were just at the final pieces?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
And so we're all feeling very optimistic about it, but we don't want to say yes until it's done. And so we're just waiting on that. As soon as it is, be watching for announcements. And but we're highly optimistic. And so I want to explain a little bit about the expense allocation that we had. I had talked to the council about allowing us to spend up to $50,000 for the summer rec program. That was more of a placeholder until we could figure out, make sure we could get everything done. We're in the process of trying to find grants to help offset the cost. We're still in that process of trying to find grants. In the meantime, though, I think the cost is $150 a week. Again, state, if you are eligible for state assistance, then you will have a significant discount. If not, your camp will be free, which is a great service. And if you have individual circumstances where you need like a little bit of assistance with whatever your situation is, even if you aren't qualified for state assistance, they're more than willing to talk to you. So this is a phenomenal opportunity for the city of Baltic. We're really looking forward to it. We appreciate the school stepping up and really providing the facility for us. And so this $50,000 is kind of we may not need it, is I guess my point.
That's
And
okay.
Yeah, and so, and we don't know exactly what the balance is, but I don't expect now to get anywhere near that since we have someone taking over the whole program for us. So it's not really a city expense to manage. So very, very exciting about that. Of course, we'll be reporting any results from this as soon as we have them. So be watching for that good news. And on to more good news, CIP grant approval. Justin, do you want to take this?
Yeah.
Okay, just so you know, this is Justin from ISG, for those of you who don't know.
We have talked about this quite a bit in the last couple of meetings, and it's really exciting. So city applied for a grant through GoEd. That's a $15,000 grant. And essentially what that would do is it would cover half the cost of a capital improvement plan for the city. Capital improvement plan looks at all city-owned facilities and infrastructure. So anything from the city hall to the sewer mains throughout town. Looks at areas of improvement, puts all those projects in a priority list and creates a 5-year plan to get those projects completed. Anything that's not completed will be put in the back as placeholders, and then as grant opportunities and stuff come up, we can take care of them. So this is just solidifying that back half, the 15K map that's required on the city for the grant application. Once we get this, we can get the project kicked off. So I expect it to start that this spring, and it'll take about 4 to 5 months to complete.
So we're gonna need some citizens to get involved in some focus groups and things like that for this.
Yep,
Okay.
we'll have, really one quarter, that's gonna provide some rankings and input and insights, Ryan's gonna be a big key player in this as well as, community council members that
Sure.
will be providing updates as council meetings as we progress, so.
And if I remember correctly, there'll be annual updates to this to make
Correct.
sure that we're properly moving it forward. So it's just a constant rolling, living, breathing document. Mhm.
If I hear one done, once the next, just have a one thing.
Yeah, that's kind of like the system we talked about. Perfect. So at this point in time, you need money.
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. So since you guys spend the money.
Make a motion to allocate
Look at
$15,000 for capital improvement plan.
I'll second.
All right, Travis. Brian, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Oh, do we need to have, John? Do
Yes.
we need to have them give me the authority to sign on behalf of the city? for this?
Yes,
Okay, we gotta do it that way. Sorry. Travis, I need you to restate.
I will make a motion to allocate 15,000 for the capital improvement plan and allow the mayor to sign any said contracts relating to the capital improvement plan. That's accurate?
Yeah,
Yes,
that
yes.
covers it all.
Second again.
Look at you, ditto. Okay, we got it again. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Any opposed? Now you have it. Do you have a formal one of these I need to sign, or can it be any copy?
So just any copy and I'll just scan it in. So.
Okay, Linda, I'm gonna have you track me down on those, okay? Okay, and so Grant Park update, Ed just shared with you about the specifics of what we're trying to do. Spring is coming, houses are being built, we want to move forward, with this. And so the P and Z committee has reminded us that this is something that's on the table. And also, is there other updates that we need to do?
I'm certainly no engineer. Yeah, I was just wondering, Justin, if, you're so used to giving presentations on technical matters to people that don't have a technical background. And I know engineering, my brother's an engineer, but I don't, I do my thing and he does his, but what are the takeaways from the memo today? I mean, I know you have cost estimates for these various categories on page 1, which is your memo today,
Yep.
that you were tasked to do. How much is this going to cost for infrastructure, public improvements? But then tracing back to your memo of November 9, could you maybe explain the fire flow analysis and water main moving and why, what caused you, as a matter of sound engineering practices, to determine that there's a redundancy that's needed on Fifth Street, for example? If a water main breaks, 100+ homes are out of service until the repairs. Could you just take us through?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. No, I like presenting, but you're gonna put me on the spot here or something.
Yeah. No, he's fine.
I present well.
Should you come up front?
But, what I'll say is, once all this first started, there was a lot of studies and all that stuff that was created. That provided a bunch of analysis already for this development and the flows and pressures within the water system. What we saw within that analysis, there were a couple different scenarios with just development and then those added loops. Within those studies, it stated those deficiencies that are noted in that report, of the lack of flow, lack of pressure. Just some of the other added things are, if there is water main break, there's 100+ homes out in that development. If, lightning strikes at that perfect location, right? So that analysis and background data was taking all those reports, bulging out all that information, and then adding in that little addition. 100-page worth of reports within that paragraph.
So did you determine that as a matter of sound engineering practice that, and in the event there was a fire emergency, that if there was a water main failure, that there could be a public health safety and life?
There could be some compromise, yes.
And how did you determine, the volume of water flow that was needed within the development and how that relates to the water main movement?
So a lot of that is based off of modeling, and ISG did not create any of those water models. That was based off of reviewing existing models. So the city paid for an engineer to complete that cost. And, as engineer, we also assume that work is done in the best interest of the city.
And Justin, you work with subdivision developments, residential, commercial all the time. And so the work that you've done here is what you would expect would be done by a developer.
Correct.
In terms of the public improvements needed for a proper development.
Correct.
Okay, and that's really all you're operating here. The bar isn't being set higher for Grant Park Capital, is that right?
No,
It's still,
absolutely not. It's the standard development practices, and you kind of see the shift in different communities. There's other communities that are a lot more stringent. Some of these general engineering principles that are in close proximity to here,
and the same goes for the detention pond. Your determination is that, as I recall, when a person develops a residential development like this, they cannot increase the velocity or the volume of surface water flows. Is that correct?
Yeah, the volume is the big thing, the volume and just the overall flow, with the development, someone may ask, how does the flow get increased, right? When you develop land, you're adding increased impervious areas like concrete where water hits it, it's just going to flow off. Versus, agricultural land where it hits the ground and it has a chance to infiltrate. You add more houses, more streets, more pavement impervious area, that runoff is going to increase and not as much water is going to be able to get into the ground. So due to that, one of the practices to negate the effects of impervious areas of the detention basin. So the water will go into the detention basin and release at existing rates condition. Without a detention basin in this case, we're likely to see downstream flooding effects. I think some of those effects have been already noticed. By rainfalls last year.
So with Murphy's Pond, for example, currently that's the detention pond. Basically, it's operating as a detention pond.
I would say, there and even upstream, within the school's property, that's what they call it, culvert there.
And so the sludge that's visible that is basically rolling downhill into Murphy's Pond without a detention pond, that situation will continue to recur over and over and over again.
Correct, until you get some good stabilization, but I would say for the near future, that's one of the number one goals in here too, is maybe jumping ahead with the DANR compliance is to get that sediment under control. It should be the developer's responsibility to get, control that sediment on site. In an ideal situation, there'll be erosion control measures, all the way throughout the development and then at the ultimate outlet with that type of thing.
Okay, and you note on your memo of November 9 that the DANR did inspections June 21, August 4, August 15, and October 26. Is that correct?
Yeah, my knowledge.
All right.
I believe those dates in there were verified by, yeah, okay, I believe they had those 4 inspections.
So until the detention pond is installed, Murphy's Pond basically will be subjected to repeated flows of soil and water that, you know, basically, I think state law defines it as polluting the waters of the state. Is that a fair way to
I
describe it?
think the fair assessment would be all downstream areas from the development if it's the increased flows.
Okay.
So that's not only in and through Murphy's Pond, but that's all the downstream culverts and stormwater infrastructure that's on there as well.
Which flows ultimately all the way down to the Big River, the Big Sur River. All right,
Does that include the stuff that flows to the south?
Justin?
So there is some stuff that flows to the south.
More than some stuff.
Yeah. And I know you brought it up in the past where you're seeing some effects on that.
So
Loss of about 15 acres of land.
So the plans that Banner basically did were to continue to use Murphy's Pond as a detention basin, is that correct? Okay, and as a matter of sound engineering practice, that is not appropriate in your opinion, correct?
Yeah, my opinion, that there should have been a basin located on the project site.
Okay, now, Justin, if a developer doesn't pay for these costs and is never required to pay for these costs for infrastructure, who would bear the expense?
Well, typically the city would look at, making improvements, as necessary to negate the effects, right?
And potentially assess the taxpayer?
Yeah.
Okay.
If we wanted to increase fire flow and protection and moving, city would look at a project to install the water main. Likewise with, the detention, or on the flip side, like upsizing all the culverts downstream to convey the flow.
And these conditions that you're describing in your memos, those are the result of the Grant Park and Phillips Crossing developments, is that correct?
Right.
All right.
And John, you're keeping our council apprised of all this information?
Your counsel, anytime he reaches out to me, I respond.
Yep.
I have not talked to him for some, it's been a few days, but
Okay.
I'm always available to anybody. You want to call me? Call me. Anybody in this room or otherwise, listen, I don't care. That's fine.
Can I just intervene just for a quick second? Hey, Brian, are you getting any feedback on the background being wonky? Any feedback on that at all? Because we're getting feedback up here from people that the Teams meeting video is a little wonky. Are you seeing anything? Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, so you guys haven't heard anything? Okay, just making sure, because we had technical difficulties last time, so I'm gonna make
Like
sure.
what's behind you looks wonky.
Yeah.
And the other day when I.
That's what he's saying.
And I'm not,
If you
apparently,
And go to like, there's like a toggle thing, if you click out of it, it'll take
Okay.
that away from you.
well, welcome to the jungle if you're in the jungle. So, okay.
Just get a text saying that it wasn't out.
So So literally, people
It's okay
think
now.
we're a lot warmer than we actually are because we're in a jungle. So they think, okay, good.
I didn't know that Jen was saying in front of me. didn't know
I have it on-
the
I have it set.
I've already seen it here, so, I'm.
Yeah. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure because, hey, but if we're in a jungle, that's kind of fun. All right. Okay, John, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No, not at all. The only other thing that might be helpful for you to explain, Justin, is to describe the process whereby a city follows certain steps in a sequence of events before it takes over the maintenance responsibilities for the infrastructure, the streets of a subdivision like this. What are typically the steps that you would be involved in that would be required to be fulfilled before a city would be expected as a matter of the construction practices that apply before the city was taking over responsibility for the infrastructure, we'll call it, in the public improvements?
Yeah, so really it boils down to the acceptance of the construction put in place. So during construction, water main, sanitary sewer construction, there's, standard tests that go along with that, just to ensure that infrastructure is gonna last and it's gonna perform, air tests for sanitary, just to make sure all the solids and water stay in the pipe and get to, the downstream area. Water main, likewise too, pressure tests to make sure we're not losing any water. That certifies that that contractor's installing those utilities, for our standards, and ultimately what Ryan will have to maintain afterwards, right? We want to make sure that infrastructure that we get doesn't cost us, considerable amount of maintenance right away. So there'll be, inspection test, so typically we would get those test reports, certify it. Everything's good, pretty standard test, same thing with the roads, density, moisture density test along that. And then compaction testing on the surface as well. We'll do a walkthrough. Take care of any, little things that come up during construction. We got a punch list walkthrough. Ryan provided some of those comments early on too, and that's just general items. Like I said, not accept that project, and then, 2 years down the road, we're replacing pavement just because it wasn't installed correctly, got damaged during construction, etc. So once we go council for acceptance and approval, and then once the council approves it based on recommendation from staff and, typically city engineer involved with that, then that becomes the city's street and utilities to maintain.
So, and that's a formal process.
Yes,
Now, question, you're aware there is no written development agreement between this developer and the city, correct?
correct.
So is the developer making any warranties, to your knowledge? There's nothing in writing, correct?
Correct.
And the developer was not required to post a performance bond, is that correct?
Well,
To the best of our knowledge.
to the best of our knowledge, yeah.
This, according to the subdivision regulations, a performance bond is required,
Right.
correct?
Yep.
And the performance bond is required in the event the developer defaults or provides substandard infrastructure that the citizens of the city are not stuck with the tab, is that correct?
Correct.
All right, and that would apply also in this situation where there are no city accepts the development, then, and there are deficiencies or problems, structural or as a matter of materials or workmanship being deficient, the city would be responsible for that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
But when you say the city, it's not really the city, it's the families of Baltic that have to find a way to pay
Right.
for them.
in other words, the taxpayers and the citizens are on the hook currently the way things stand.
Yeah.
Because there's no performance bond and there's no warranties.
Right.
Okay. And is a performance bond and are warranties given by a developer standard requirements of any subdivision development?
Pretty standard across the board.
Yes. So it's below the standard that a developer would be expected to perform if he doesn't have a performance bond and if he doesn't give express written warranties to the city, correct? Okay,
And we actually had a punch list from the previous administration that was actively being communicated to the developer, correct?
So yes.
Yeah, if I recall, I think the last documented meeting we had was February of 21. That they actually sat down with the developer with their punch list. So this has been a living, breathing, working process of deficiencies that they've been trying to correct with them in both the past administration as well as this administration. Okay.
thank you, Justin. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay. Can the witness be released?
Yes.
Or Justin, he never knows what he's not gonna do. You do a fantastic job, fantastic. A+ on the pop quiz. Good job. Good job. And so, with all of that information now, so now it's all fresh in our mind because it's been ruminating for a couple of months in the middle of all of this other fun stuff. What we're thinking is probably it's a good time because it's spring and it's time to build, that we remind the developer that they have a development agreement that is before them, so we can start moving forward. So, it might be appropriate, or at least for the council to consider, instructing John to, go ahead and send that back over again to remind them that this is something that's actively in play.
You need a motion.
Yes, I do.
I'll make a motion to have John send that development agreement over to Grant Park and Phillips Crossing as soon as possible.
Second.
Me, Ryan is a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. John, go ahead and refresh that and let's see if we can get this worked out.
Will do. Thank you.
That's all we had for business tonight. And so, we're gonna move to adjournment. But, after we, adjourn.
Before you do that, this has all been a great refresher,
Uh-huh.
but for those who haven't been present for the ongoing process,
Mhm.
would you please also summarize what our council has done proactively to keep things moving along with some of these things like the,
Can I answer that?
Do you?
Yeah, we have been busting our butts defending the city against the developers' lawsuits. That's what we've been doing there. This has soaked up hundreds of hours of time. And so the developer, what we did is we put this on the developer's desk on November 16th. What more can we do? And then we end up with a notice of claim and a notice of hearing request to the Board of Adjustment on November 10th. Then on November 23, we have 2 lawsuits, hundreds of pages of documents.
And the RTO.
And then we end up with a temporary restraining order in December. I mean, what more does the developer need? This is all the engineering information. We've been so transparent. There, I don't mean to be prickly, but, we knew the lawsuits were defective. We were very confident the judge would dismiss them, but it took several hundred hours.
Mhm.
So an enormous amount of time has been wasted and squandered.
John, I understand that. What I was asking about,
Mhm.
actually, I probably wasn't specific enough in my question, is I know from past meetings that there's been some work that this council has been doing on like the fire and water looping and all of that.
Mhm.
And I would just like you to have the opportunity to speak to that, especially since all of us are already seeing some impact of that in our current water bills. So if you would, please.
Well, I think, Justin actually addressed that in the fact that we do have the water studies, and that's part of accepting the development, because we need to make sure that pressure's there and it's, intact for the rest of the city. One of the other things that will impact that is that 4th to 5th loop. And now that we have the SRF dollars are going to be in place because we have those 2 projects on Second and Oak, which is down there. And then we have the 4th to 5th loop from the water tower. That's gonna help with your water pressure because it's gonna create a loop for the whole city. The 6th to 7th loop is primarily benefiting the development and probably should have been part of the development from the beginning. And so, with the SRF projects, I don't know what the projected end date for those projects are, Justin, do you know?
So for water main and second note, trying to get those bid this year with likely in spring completion data next year, 2024. So we just have that funds expended by 2026.
Right, so keep me honest here. So Deb, your question is what's gonna happen with your water pressure, right?
No, actually, I just wanted you to have the opportunity to tell everyone in our community that even though the developer is sitting idle and non-responsive, our city council has been proactively moving forward to the benefit not only of people in the development, but the rest of us who have had water pressure issues.
Yeah, well, you just said it for me. Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that.
I never want to put words in your mouth.
Oh, that's okay. So it's okay when they're good words. So with that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn, but I do have some commentary to make as the mayor after the adjournment, which will be separate from the city council meeting. And so, I just need a motion to adjourn and then we can move to that section.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
at 6:28.
Yep.
6:28, we got Nikki on a first, Ryan's got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nobody ever wants to not stop recording. I'm gonna keep the feed going so people can see. And the formal part of the city council is done and I'm gonna address some things.